I know this was our topic last season, Bo, but I'm feeling the need to ask questions about battle rhythms here.
There's a layer of adversity that was certainly present in your high school experience and even afterwards, that in addition to just growing up as an underprivileged African American male in the Southeast, there was a layer of adversity, and that was that other young people at your high school, your classmates, would make fun of you for being like a teacher's pet or a coach's pet.
I think themed throughout the movie to see the impact that police have on African American males. Like after the interrogation with the cop, I sat in Scribner's car and I cried. It's just very so often that you see a police officer misuse their power. And I mean, he interrogated me about things that didn't matter at the present moment, like about my mom, who at the time, me and my mom, we didn't have any communication. I could say I didn't even know where my mom was.
Welcome to the Bo and Luke Show, a podcast designed to inspire you to be better, know better, and do better. You can connect with Bo and Luke on social media at The Bo and Luke Show, or send us an email at fanfeedback@theboandlukeshow.com. Brought to you by Sound United. Without further ado, let's get after it.
Hey, Bo and Luke Nation. Elle here, special guest with co-hosting with Bo and Luke today. And we have with us Jailen Young and Chris Scribner. And for those of you who don't know, Jailen is a wrestler in Kentucky at Berea College. He's a senior this year. And Chris Scribner is a Army JAG officer currently stationed at Fort Bragg. But what they have in common is wrestling. So I will hand it over to them. And Jailen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, just to briefly introduce myself, I'm Jailen Young from Huntsville, Alabama, currently a student at Berea College. I'm in my last semester. I'll be graduating in May, and I'm not a wrestler at Berea. I'm just a full-time student. So.
Gotcha. Chris, what about you, buddy?
And I'm Chris Scribner. I'm an officer in the Army and a judge advocate, so I'm a lawyer in the Army. And one of my fondest memories and jobs was teaching Jailen 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade in high school. And I got to coach him for 3 of those years. It should have been 4, but we'll talk about why. It was 3 of those years. So,
yeah, that's fantastic. And Bo and Luke Nation, hey, we'll put the links in the show notes, but what's pretty fascinating about their story with Jailen and Chris is captured on a documentary called Wrestle, available on Amazon. We may talk a little bit about it. We may not, but you can go to Amazon. It's available on Prime. You can watch it yourself. Incredible story. J.L. Johnson High School, Huntsville, Alabama. Guys, that's how you met. So it was freshman year, right, Jailen?
Yeah, freshman year.
And it started out in the classroom. What subject did Chris teach you?
He taught me world history. I believe it was world history or some history class.
Yeah. Do you remember anything from world history class?
Nah, I was probably there like half the time. I was not in this class.
Chris, that's a hell of an impact.
So Jailen had a funny habit. I had Jailen last period. So that's like, if any of you remember last period from your school days, or any of the teachers out there who listen to the Bo and Luke Show, you know that last period, like nobody wants to be there anymore. Yeah. And Jailen had a great habit of, in the middle of my 7th period world history class, he would just leave in the middle, and then I wouldn't see him again. And so that became a common thing. That was in 9th grade, but little did he know that he was going to have me for another 3 years.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Karma came back to him.
What would you do, Jailen? Would you just like get up and leave, or would you be like, hey, I have to use the bathroom, or was it just no explanation?
I would probably just get up and leave, and I would leave school. Like that would just be, I just decided when my day ended.
That was it.
Yeah, that was it.
I love that, man. I would never let my kids would have never gotten away with that. I didn't
even know that was an option.
Me. That was me in my senior year. I had half the day at a vocational school, and the rest of the second half was at the high school. And when I got back to the high school, if I didn't feel like the rest of the day, I would just get in my car and go home.
Do you want to know what I did with the second half of my day my senior year?
What'd you do?
I went and taught 6th grade math and science. I was a teacher cadet.
That's
overachiever.
Yeah.
I left and I went and taught kids the rest of their day.
Go ahead.
I transferred schools, and I went from private to public, and I already had enough credits to graduate in the public system. But in Peoria, Illinois, there was no early graduation. So my entire senior year, I just took classes like freshman geography and I don't know, painting, just
So-
weird stuff like that. I was so disengaged. I think I almost failed freshman geography.
Wow.
I
That's
made
probably
it
a
past,
tough
though.
one.
I made it. I made
Yeah,
it.
of course you did. So,
Yeah.
so Chris, did you start coaching the wrestling team the freshman year as well?
So Jalen's freshman year was my first year as a teacher. And when I first walked into his high school, it's called J.O. Johnson High School. It was shut down at the end of the 2017 school year. At the end of the 2016 school year. I walked in and there was a 6'6" Marine drill instructor from drill instructor school. So he's the drill instructor of Marine drill instructors. And he was my assistant principal, Mr. Tomlin. And I ran college track. I grew up wrestling, but I ran college track, and I really wanted to coach something.
Mm-hmm.
He stuck his hand out first moment I walked into the school, and I remember he like enveloped my hand. His fingers went like almost to my elbow. And I said, "Hey, Mr. Tomlin, I'm the new history teacher, Chris Scribner. I'd love to coach something this year. Do you have any openings as well for coaching spots?" And he said, "Yeah, do you want to coach wrestling?" And I said, "Oh, sure. Can I coach track?" And he said, no, we have a track coach, but you can coach wrestling. And he didn't even know if I had done it before. I happened to grown up wrestling. And I said, yes, but I didn't realize that they didn't have a team. So they didn't have like mats or other coaches or students who had wrestled at the school or a room for wrestling. And I just said yes. And when I said yes, I kind of locked myself in to this incredible adventure that lasted another 7 years for me. This is my first year not coaching at the high school since that day, really. And Jailen was in my 9th grade class, and he was actually one of my first participants on the wrestling team. And I'll let Jailen, you can talk a little bit about why you didn't participate for the whole season that year.
Yeah, so I was just going through my own personal struggles at home. I was dealing with like a clinging nature to my parents. I was raised by my grandparents, but I just always clung on to the hopes that I could stay with my mom or my dad, or even both of them. But I had the opportunity to stay with my dad, but my dad was homeless, and still there was along with him homeless. So I just wasn't able to find transportation to school. I just even made a decision on my own to say, like, all right, I'm not going to go to school today, even if I had the opportunity. So in like making those decisions, I didn't give myself the opportunity to be able to be on the team, even if Scrib was willing to lend his hand out to come and pick me up for a practice or take me to a tournament or, do whatever behind his back to, get me on the mat. I just always made a decision that, no, I just wanted to stick in to whatever I was doing at the time that obviously, wasn't for the best of my interest, but I had my own personal problems going on then, and I just did what I thought was best for me.
Yeah.
So I was able to wrestle my freshman year. I maybe came out to a couple of practices, but for me to not be in school, I didn't make it to enough practices to be able to compete. So I just kind of made that decision for myself.
Yeah. And then did you go back sophomore year? Did you join the team full time?
Yeah. So actually, when I moved out of my grandparents' house to be with my dad, Scribner was still heckling me to get on the mat. So it came to, we had off-season trainings with a club in Huntsville, Alabama, and he was taking me to pick up clothes to go to practice. And I think there was some situation where I also needed school materials, but my school materials was in one place, and my practice, all my clothes were in another place. And it just came to like Scribner asking me. Well, he was just really starting to tell me, like, you need to go back to stay with your grandparents. And I mean, from that day, moved in with my grandparents, and Scribner since then is always just still, even before that, he's just always been on my back about just, doing what was best for me. So
Wow.
I eventually found myself back wrestling sophomore year.
Yeah.
And so Bo and Luke and Elle, I just want to kind of, from my perspective, I was taking Jailen after school one day. I said, Jailen, do you want to ride home? And he was kind of nervous, and he was like, sure. And so I said, okay, where are you staying right now? Because it wasn't uncommon for students to maybe move around during the course of a school year. And and Jailen was like, well, here's where I'm going to this housing project, and I'd taken kids there before, and so I knew where it was, and so we went to that housing project, and he was like, well, this is where my clothes are, but I actually have like my book bag at a different housing project with another relative. And so we went to that housing project, which was in a different part of town in Huntsville, Alabama. And then I was like, well, where have you been staying? And he was kind of like, didn't have an answer. And I got emotional, you know, like I was still in my first year teaching, and Jailen, while he had quit the wrestling team, he was still my student, and I knew he was bright, you know, he's definitely a talented person. And and I just couldn't believe that this kid didn't have like a consistent place to stay.
Yeah.
And so then that's when we talked about him going back to his grandparents' house, and he had some arguments with his grandparents and wasn't staying there, and so then he went back, and yeah, I mean, I just
Yeah. Where
not uncommon. I mean, Jailen, would you agree with that? Like, your situation in North Huntsville was unfortunately
common among like most of my like neighbors, peers, whoever is.
Yeah.
Common situation too.
So Chris, where did that level of it's an aspect, it's a real aspect of some deep leadership principles and taking care of your people. Where'd that come from for you? I mean, you weren't in the Army yet, so you hadn't learned it, you hadn't learned it in leading soldiers yet. Where did that come from inside your own personal character to want to not just help Jailen, but the rest of your, other kids on the team and so forth, and outside of the classroom, outside of the practice? What in your upbringing or whatever, how did you build that character in yourself?
I came from an educated and privileged family, a good family, and went to great schools. And despite all those resources, I still found myself kicked out of high school my senior year. I struggled with drugs and alcohol as a teenager. I ended up getting sober when I was 18 years old after many interventions. And when I was 18, one of the many people who helped me get sober, I remember standing on a porch with this guy who was running my sober house that I was living in my senior year of high school. And I was leaving to go to college, which I was nervous about. And he looked at me and he said, Chris, you're going to help a lot of people. That's what you're supposed to do. And I don't know if he was speaking truth into me, or if he saw that I had some inclination to be helpful or what. But
Sure.
that's like just become my North Star, like that statement of that one person. And so my feeling was that if I had all these resources and I nearly squandered them because I had a mental illness that I call addiction, then imagine what like people go through who don't have the resources that I had. And I don't think Jailen has addiction problems, but he certainly dealt with trauma. And I think he'd be the first to admit that, like, bouncing around different housing, even though he had grandparents who are incredible and who love him, and a community that's incredible, it still takes its toll. And so it all stemmed from that. Anything good in my life stemmed from the people who helped me get sober, in addition to my own family.
I think it's a great point, Luke. And all the different things we talk about on our show, and we talk about leadership and routines and battle rhythms and, always getting after it and going after your dreams and so forth. But I think it's important to note for everyone listening, when we talk about leadership, how do you really, number one thing that a leader to be a really great leader should do is care about your people. And then how do you actually care about your people and those that you lead, regardless of who they are? I always tell people, you got to really know your people. You got to know them inside out, their families, their kids, what they're dealing with on the home front. What are their circumstances? Everybody's different. But if you're going to treat them all and earn their trust and confidence, the things that Chris is talking about are things that you definitely, I don't know, at some point you have to figure that out as a leader, that's the type of things that will matter and make a difference. So Jailen, how did that, when you look back on that time, Do you think that had a big impact on, your ability to wrestle and do what you did and get you to college and all those types of things?
Yeah, as I think about my past and how Scribner has always just been, a motivational push just in every, sector of life, it definitely, motivated me throughout wrestling. And just as I look at how I branch into my next stage of life, just seeing the seed that Scribner planted in me, it just grows me to want to be something similar to some community, wherever that may be. I don't really feel like I would have lived my life the best if I cannot produce to a community to some substance that Scribner or many people have done so much for me. So for Scribner and so many is just planting the seed in me to go out and serve a community in some way. So
that's great.
Really quick, I want to talk a little bit about the nuances of the sport of wrestling and how it's an incredible martial art for leadership development. So Jailen weighed about 100 pounds all 4 years of high school. And you can't go out and contribute to a varsity football program at 100 pounds. I mean, there are few sports, frankly, at the high school level where you could excel as a lighter guy. And Jailen was a state champion. And not only was he a state champion, he talked about his first full season was his sophomore year. He had 50 wins and qualified for the state tournament his first year. Yeah. His second year, he got third in the state. And his senior year, he was the state champion. And so he was his high school's first state champion in any sport, because his junior year, his school got shut down because it was struggling academically. And then all the students and teachers moved across the street to a new school that is now called Mae Jemison High School. And same actual mascot and colors, but just a new building and new name. And Jailen was the first state champion. And then the next week, the basketball team won a state championship.
No kidding.
He beat them by a week. They had been winning state championships like every year before that too. They had an incredible program and an incredible coach, Coach Doss. But wrestling allowed a smaller person to compete against people his own size and excel just based on his own work ethic. I mean, Jailen was never the most athletic or the strongest, and certainly one of the least experienced at the state tournament the 3 years he went. But one thing that he did that was really cool, he wrote down, I believe Jailen most days, if not every day, he wrote down his name, his weight class, and I want to be the 2017 Alabama state champion. And he wrote that down every day. Yeah. And he worked at it. I mean, he worked every day. And we're talking about me as his high school coach for 3 years and whatever impact I made. Like, I don't want to rewrite history. The reality was that I was a brand new teacher and coach. I was 25 years old when I first met Jailen. And I made an incredible number of incredible mistakes. And the best part about all my students, and Jailen especially, is like he let me make those mistakes, and he didn't turn his back whenever I was just so subpar so many days. And I think that just speaks to the resilience of the kids who I coached, both men and women who I coached, who stuck with me. When Jailen graduated, his sister actually took his spot on the varsity as the starting 106 pounder.
Really?
A year after he won a state championship. And at the end of that season, she basically said to me, Coach Scribner, you're a trash coach. And I said, why? And she said, well, because like you didn't hold me to the same expectations as my brother, because you thought he was more talented than I am. And I was also a starter on the same team, and I deserved the same level of expectations. And coaching it's such a mirror to our own defects of character. I mean, so I think about my mistakes that I made as a coach all the time. And I'm just thankful that, Jailen still talks to me.
Guys, this is amazing. First off, I just love hearing you guys overcoming adversity. This is great. I know this was our topic last season, Bo, but I'm feeling the need to ask questions about battle rhythms here.
Yeah, do it.
I think, guys, do you have battle rhythms you do every day? Because I've learned look, the older I get, like I realize that I just never really get good at something. I just get better at practicing it every day, right? So if that makes sense to people. But I just kind of realized that, hey, I suck at it unless I do something every day. So like the battle rhythm and the routine that I get into is what helps me. And I'm feeling that I need to ask this question because you guys probably have some sort of thing going on there.
I mean, honestly, when I think about my battle rhythm, I feel like this has been my battle rhythm. Like since I'm at Scribner, it's just not giving up. You know, like I feel like in every phase of my life, I've been getting a chance where I could just say like, all right, this is it. I'm gonna give up. In high school, I was close to dropping out. That was my give up moment, but it was just, man, I got to push through it. I got to keep going. And even through college, I look at, you know, even in my community and those around me, there's not many or any that I can name off my hand that go to college all 4 years and graduate, who just push through it. And even as I think about the next stage of my life, like put my name on an application to get a job, I mean, my battle rhythm is simply just not giving up. Because as I look, you know, those around me, it's just so easy to say like, all right, let's settle. Let's just accept it for what it is right here, and not, you know, push through it. So my battle road was just not giving up with everything that I do. Like if I wake up in the morning, I have to go to the gym, and I want to go to the gym. I mean, dude, you can't give up. You have something you're trying to work for. You just push through it. So that's just my battle road, just not giving up through whatever's next for me. So
keep doing that. That'll work.
Yeah, keep doing that for sure.
Yeah.
How about you, Chris?
So I have days where I'm on autopilot, where I take the wheel, and those days suck because like I am not, if I'm the biggest power of my day, I mean, as I've already stated, I'm highly fallible. So like it's going to be not a great day, you know, but then the days where I actually follow, as Jailen talks about his battle rhythm, like I have a blueprint for how to be of service and, you know, how to give as much of myself to others as possible during the day. And that starts out with me waking up and praying to a God of my understanding in the morning, and specifically praying for other people, not for my own needs. When I was a kid, I remember praying about winning Little League games. Like when I was a pitcher, I'd pray, like I'd look at the ceiling and be like, God, please help me win that game. And it would actually, I think, help because it's kind of like goal setting. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that, you know, it's really not about me anymore. You know, my purpose, I feel like, is to take whatever gifts I've been given and to transmit them to other people. Not because I'm a good guy, but because that's like what fills my heart during the day. And so I pray to a God of my understanding, and then I call someone in the morning who I can be completely honest with. Like, I think it's important that everybody have at least one person in their life who knows everything about them, like every dark corner, all the stuff that you would want to go to your grave with. At least one person, I think, needs to know all those things. And so I call that person in the morning and, you know, talk about how my head and attitude are doing that morning. And usually it's pretty mundane. And then I go to work and I try to be of service at work. You know, not everything we do during the workday is like super fun. You know, we can't all host a podcast and have super interesting people like Jailen on every day. But I know you got, both you guys have worked really hard for a long time before getting to this point. But I'm in my dream job now. You know, I wanted to be in the United States Army since I was a teenager. As I said, I struggled with drugs and alcohol as a teenager. And for that reason, I had a choice early on. Should I be honest about the drugs and alcohol, or not be honest and get into the military, which was my dream? And you know, I decided to be honest, and frankly, it took me 15 years of sobriety to get a waiver to get into the military. And so I'm super grateful. My job, I'm new though. It's like, I've only been in for really a few months, so I have a lot to learn. But I go to work and then, you know, try to be of service during work, and then after work, I try to you know, like find some activity that I can do with somebody else where like I can be interacting with them and kind of hearing about their problems or what's going well in their life, and kind of like just share life with somebody in some kind of like usually active pursuit, like running or something like that, or playing sports. But coaching was amazing for that. I hope everybody who listens to this podcast has the opportunity to coach something. I'll never have a job that was more meaningful than coaching Jailen and his teammates. for 7 years. Is just the best. And one thing I want to say early on in this podcast is that, like, Jailen being a senior in college, graduating, and he'll talk about some of the amazing opportunities he's got lined up. It's so moving to me because Jailen has teammates and classmates who were shot and killed, like multiple. He couldn't count them on two hands. He could keep going with names of people who aren't here anymore. He has plenty more classmates who had amazing opportunities to go to college, and for whatever reason, it was just too much at that time, and so they haven't made it yet. And then Jailen also has a ton of role models in his community and on his wrestling team that have gone on and finished college and are doing amazing things. They're engineers, they're teachers, they're just doing all sorts of crazy cool stuff. But for someone where Jailen's coming from in North Huntsville, the stakes were really high, really early. And I don't think that's necessarily fair, but that's a fact of life of some places in America. And so I think when you have a young person like Jailen, who he's not successful because he had like a mediocre 25-year-old coach in high school, he's successful because he sought help when he needed it. And he set goals and he followed through on them. And I wasn't the only adult in his life that he sought out. I mean, in addition to his grandparents, he was the type of person who built strong relationships with a lot of teachers and other people in the community. And he was humble. Jailen's a humble guy. I mean, he's confident, but I have to celebrate people like Jailen, because too often during the day, I think about the kids who aren't here anymore or who are really struggling. And so I need to think about the young men like Jailen and women like Jailen who they're okay right now. They're okay today.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, Jailen, you said it best. Elle looked up graduation rates. First time college students, the 4-year graduation rate's only 41% in the entire United States. So that's like 41 out of 100, 4 out of 10, whatever you want to say. So just that attitude, and I don't think any of us can say it better. And for everybody listening, and we have a listenership, younger listenership as well. When you get up and you just have the attitude of don't give up, right? Just don't give up. If you face every day like that, things will happen, and you really can achieve more than you probably ever thought you could achieve, regardless of your background or whatever. You just got to have that attitude of not giving up and seeking out help when you need help, whether that's studies, whether that's, getting faster on the track, getting stronger in the weight room, whatever, right? Just don't do it. So Jailen, huge congratulations on your upcoming graduation. That is just super, super fantastic. We love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations, man. That's huge.
It is huge. So before, since you, in the very beginning in the intro, Jailen, you said that you did not wrestle or you haven't been wrestling in college. Was there something that happened that you said, I'm done wrestling, I don't want to do that anymore? I mean, you go from state champion at end of your senior year of high school. Were you being recruited by colleges to come wrestle for them? How'd that transition happen?
I had some schools I was having some talks with about maybe coming to wrestle, but the biggest thing for me about college was going where it was affordable. So I'm going to school for free, and if I was at another school, there's no telling how much I would be paying. So when I'm in school for free, and there's just no wrestling team at Berea.
I gotcha.
A lot of schools, so it would be very hard to recruit many students to wrestle. Yeah. I've stayed active though. I've been in some intramural sports, flag football, basketball, dodgeball.
Yeah.
I still stay active.
So Luke, not only does Jailen have the right attitude, I mean, not just don't give up, set priorities, right? That's so important for all of us at any age, is to be able to set those priorities and then not let other things distract from those priorities. So if the goal is to, not have the debt, the loan debt or whatever, because you chose a different school. And look at that.
It's smart to go to school.
It's fascinating. It's phenomenal. It's awesome.
And if I could have wrestled in college, I would have. I love the sport, but money was just that was a big determining factor.
Yeah.
And so Jailen reached out to me just this last week and talked about an idea he had. You want to share that, Jailen? It's even better than wrestling in college, I think.
That's
Yeah. So currently I have an opportunity to come back to Huntsville as we're living in the days of COVID and it's undetermined how long we'll be here. I've taken a job in Tampa and I was really debating on just moving right to Tampa in the summer and, just setting myself up there. But I am now considering moving back to North Huntsville, staying here and then working remotely for the company that's recruited me to come work for them. And I want to come back and coach the wrestling team, pick up a nonprofit that Scribner helped start, and just continue to, push the service work here in North Huntsville that Scribner has shown me much how to do. So.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So you've made that decision or you're thinking about it?
Let's say I've recently been told that I can work remotely, but we're going to wait until for sure thing before I say that I'll be in Huntsville. But there's a strict, as we think about COVID, it's very strong that I'll be here. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Congratulations.
So Jailen this year, he's an accounting major at Berea. So he got a big job. He did a big summer internship and then got an offer to work at a big accounting firm and to work specifically in their Tampa office. So that's exciting that, to have,
yeah, for sure.
You don't often think like, oh, I want to grow up to be an accountant, but it's actually, so necessary and can lead to incredible business opportunities. But also Jailen got into Teach for America, which was the teaching program that I did that brought me to Alabama in the first place. I was randomly assigned Alabama. And it's cool because Jailen has, these two competitive things that he gets to choose from. And I was, to be candid, trying to nudge Jailen to do the thing that I did because that's what I know. And so when I talked to him, I kind of be like, but, this Teach for America thing, it was great. And allowed me to get to coach the team. And I think you'd have a great experience doing it. But it's been powerful and kind of a spiritual experience for me to have Jailen, have one of my students make an adult decision about what to do. And he's choosing between two equally good options. It's like that poem by Robert Frost, A Road Less Traveled. Like people think like that the narrator took the road less traveled, but actually at the beginning of the poem, the narrator says that each road was equally traveled at equal footsteps. And the poem is really about looking back in old age and kind of exaggerating that you did this like unique thing, even though like we don't know what if you take road A or B, we don't know where it's going to lead. But Jailen, it sounds like he's going to choose this accounting thing. And I wanted him to do Teach for America because I would hoped in my heart he could go back to Huntsville and coach the team. But now he chose this accounting thing, and it turns out that through that, he might get to go back to Huntsville and coach the team. And right now, a coach took over for us a couple of years ago. His name's Dave Cagle, and he was on talk about not giving up. He got COVID, and he was on a ventilator for 10 weeks. He was in a coma for a number of those weeks, and we didn't know if he was going to make it. And he's just got a big heart, and he loves the Mae Jemison Jaguar wrestling program. Yeah. And he fought and he survived, and he's still the head coach. And then he recruited a guy named Eric Shankles, who is a 4-time Alabama state champion and a Division I wrestler at Edinburgh in Pennsylvania, which is a really good school, a really good team. Wow. And so they've got a great program, and now they might have their first state champ come back and be an assistant coach. So it's like big things happening down in Huntsville, Alabama with that wrestling.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's awesome.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Jailen, I'm telling you, you reached the pinnacle of making adult decisions when you decided to become an accountant. It does not get any more adult than that.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it? Assets plus equity equals liability or whatever.
Equals liability known as equity.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
balance
why
sheet.
We need to hire Jailen.
The balance sheet is the balance sheet is. That's the great thing, right? So even if you were to go Teach for America and coach, accounting will be accounting when you finish. And whenever you want to get into that, you pick the profession that is tried and true.
We have a couple businesses, and the last thing I would ever cancel is the accountants. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing with that. Trust me, the job security is there forever.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So we got to have one or two stories from back in the day when you were in high school and wrestling and some team stories, and I guess there's some story around a bus and something that happened on the bus. Jailen, what was it?
Yeah.
Jalen's going to tell his version, then I'm going to tell my version.
Okay.
So are we talking about on the butt, like when I was on the butt? Because there's 2 instances of me urinating. That's
there's 2. See, in the pre-show, for everyone listening, in the pre-show, we heard of that there was 1. Didn't know there was 2. So,
yeah. So I guess the one that he's referencing is on the bus. It was a sectional tournament. We were leaving. Scribner, I don't think he was traveling on the bus with us. So if he was there, this would maybe been handled a lot differently. So we're on our way back. We didn't stop. We maybe ate at a restaurant, celebrated the moments of sectionals, and we're going back to Huntsville. And it's maybe an hour, close to 2-hour drive. And we didn't stop. And I could not hold my urine. So our coach said I had to pee. He didn't want to stop. So I found a bottle and peed in the bottle. And I'm not sure. I was far in the back, and I'm not sure how he heard that I peed in the bottle. But I did. He found out. He came back. He said his choice words. And he was ready to suspend me from the team. And this was a week before the state championships, my junior year. So I wasn't going to win, but I would have placed 3rd. And if he didn't allow me on the team, I wouldn't have been there. So, yeah, I was very close to being kicked off the team because I urinated in a bottle.
Wow.
So here's my version. So after sectionals, which are the state qualifier tournament, they're in Birmingham every year. And my only sibling, my brother Chuck, lives in Birmingham. And so after that tournament every year, I would drive to my brother's house and hang out with him and his family. And so I wasn't on the bus, but I had 2 assistant coaches for a couple of years at Johnson. This was when Jailen was at Johnson High School. The last year we had a team there. And one of them was named James Dowd. He's a head coach now in Huntsville, and he is an amazing man. He's a Marine veteran, talks openly with the kids about his experiences in Iraq, and just a force of a person and an amazing coach. But he's got a temper. Well, he did back then. I think he's probably chilled out since with experience. But he calls me up and he's hollering, and I can't understand a word he's saying. And I'm like, Coach Dowd, what is going on? And he's like, and I was like, Dowd, slow down. What's going on? And he's like, Coach, it's Jailen or me. It's Jailen or me. And I was like, what? And he was like, either you kick Jailen off the team or I'm quitting. And
I never got to tell this. This is pretty hilarious.
I was like, well, we're going to the state tournament next week. And I just thought for a second, I was like, Dowd is a great coach and I love him like a brother, but he's not going to score any points at the state tournament. So I went with Jailen, who's our starting 106-pounder who had a chance of winning the state tournament that year. And eventually it was okay. Coach Dowd not only didn't quit the team, he helped coach Jailen to a state title the next year. And then he went on he's coached many state champions since then, including a blind state champion a couple of years ago. So he's an amazing man. And, the funny thing about that story was I had this dilemma, I guess, of like, do I listen to my coach, like my assistant, who I think is like, it's kind of like if I were a, platoon leader or something, like, do I listen to my platoon sergeant who I think is acting irrationally? Like Jailen was peeing in a bottle on a bus and it sounded like they refused to stop the bus and there was no bathroom on the bus. It was just a yellow school bus. So it kind of seemed reasonable to me. Like I would probably pee in a bottle if I had to go. It's better than on the floor.
I've done it before. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I thought that Coach Dowd was wrong.
I'll tell you. Well, yeah. Wow. Yep. I think he did the right thing.
Yeah.
I mean, let the person that hasn't peed in a bottle in some sort of vehicle throw the first stone, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
And actually, Jailen didn't learn his lesson because then later on he peed in a parking lot and got arrested, and it's a scene in a movie now that's on Amazon Prime. If you want to see Jailen get arrested peeing, it's on Amazon Prime. See Wrestle.
Yeah, I saw that.
It happened before the sectional tournament, so I knew. But
you got arrested before?
No. In the film, that happened first, and then I peed again on the bus. So I should have known better.
The film kind of mixes and matches the chronology, but yeah, Jailen knew, and that was a powerful moment in the film. I don't know if Jailen, you want to talk about that.
I mean, as we think about the present time and we think about, the many cases of police and police brutality, and I'm not the one to say what your opinion should be, but that was just a very strong, I think, theme throughout the movie to see the impact that police have on African-American males. Like after the interrogation with the cop, I sat in Scribner's car and I cried. And I'm not sure if you can really see it, but I cried because it's just very so often that you see a police officer misuse their power. And I mean, he interrogated me about things that didn't matter at the present moment, like about my mom, who at the time, me and my mom, we didn't have any communication. I could say I didn't even know where my mom was. So in that moment, just thinking about what was going on, and that was 2016. So cases of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown and whatever was going on at the time just lingers in my mind. And as you watch that film today, you just see the continued actions of police against African-American males, and it will just continue to resonate, It was 2016, it's 2021, and you guys have just seen it. So that's just something that resonates through time, just the actions of African Americans and police officers. So.
And after Jailen had that interaction with the police officer, I responded terribly, and I just assumed that Jailen was 100% in the wrong, and came down really hard on Jailen during a time when, he probably, I know he had all sorts of feelings brewing, and I just came off as a dick, honestly, excuse my language. And it's something that's hard for me to see on screen. It's like I see one of the many mistakes that I made as an educator in that moment. And again, I'm just glad that Jailen forgave me. One thing Jailen mentioned is mom, and this is like a great story of forgiveness. Jailen, you want to tell them like how long you went without talking or seeing your mom, and what that's been like?
My parents, they divorced in the early 2000s. I started seeing my grandma when I was 1. So let's say my parents split when I was 1 year old, and I didn't see my mom again until I was 20. So I went that long without seeing my mom. And at the age of 16, he asked me about my mom. And that's, very triggering, but and I've just seen her recently again for Christmas and New Year's. So I'm grateful for that. But it's been a while since. So that was
wow.
I asked about.
Wow.
Like every time that I get a little miffed at one of my family members, I remember that Jailen Young went 18 years without seeing his mother, and not only forgave her, but now he visits her on holidays in New Jersey. He travels here. It's incredible.
That's great to hear, Jailen.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's awesome. And the problem with any documentary that you watch as a viewer, you don't know what's been edited out or you don't get the whole context of whatever it is that you're watching. So I would just recommend to people, definitely watch the documentary Wrestle. It's a fascinating documentary, but always remember that you're getting the final edited version. And how long did they spend with you guys filming? It was quite some time, right?
Yeah, from the end of the season until the seniors graduated. So
yeah, so think about that. That's
5 months. They were
5 months.
Yeah, and they were intimately involved in.
And the documentary is less than 2 hours.
One time I woke up and the camera was there.
Yeah.
I was naked.
Yeah. So I'm very thankful that you both are on the show, and then you just provide more clarity, because that's what's needed. You need to have full clarity when you have these kind of conversations so that you can actually talk about it and get the truth out there for sure. And I'll tell you one more thing about the peeing in the bottle. I give you a thumbs up for that, because and Chris, you now being a JAG officer, I'll tell you, there's opposite sides on how people view that. Because when I was in Iraq, in the middle of the night, for me and all of my troops, it was peeing in the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
You have these big giant water bottles that you drink during the day. They're like 18 inches, 1.5 feet tall. You just cut the top off at night, and that's where middle of the night, you don't want to get all dressed up in your full battle rattle combat gear just to go outside, to take a leak and use the bottle. And then when you go out in the morning, you empty the bottle. But there were other people who didn't see it that way in other units, and soldiers actually got Article 15, which is
Wow.
formal punishment from their commands because they didn't have that view. So
I need to come clean. I need to come clean about something. I never told Jailen this story, but when I was a freshman in college, I was on the track team, and I was just coming from a meet, and I was wearing my full, jumpsuit, maroon and white jumpsuit from my track team, and I had to pee, and I was outside, and it was, I was in Minnesota, and it was kind of cold, and I just wanted to go right then where I was. I didn't want to, walk anywhere and go to the bathroom, so I peed on a tree. And the campus cops were driving by, and I thought they saw me. They actually didn't see me. This is a moral of a story. If like you're not sure if law enforcement sees you doing something bad, just like don't move, because they didn't see me, I don't think, but they did see me sprinting away. And so they just saw someone running away from the cop car. And so they started chasing me, and I was feeling fast. I was in like good shape, and I'd just come from a meet. And so the cop car like turned around the corner. I ran one way around the building. The cop car came the other way, and it was driving right towards me. And I just ran past it as fast as I could. And then the car stopped and screeched, and then it reversed as fast as possible. And then I ran the other way, and we just started zigzagging. Needless to say, this really pissed them off. Use the pun. And they, like these were campus cops, but like I guess they give those people some serious tools, because they like had some accessories out, and they were ready to like, I think, put a hurt on me. And they made me put my hands on the hood of the car, and they breathalyzed me and everything. I was a year and a half sober at that time. I hadn't even had a drink at all. And so I was got in a little trouble at my college, Jailen. So you're not the only one. And that brings up another point, which was that I made mistakes when I was young, so that when my students and the young people that I coached made mistakes, and now I have to think about this as a leader in other contexts, right? But like, I made a ton of mistakes as a kid, and that really defined a lot of how I view life today, which is that we're flawed. And we have to improve, and like improvement never ends. We get a daily reprieve from our shortcomings as fallible humans, and we ask for guidance, and we're just constantly in need of improvement, right? And like, one thing that's hard though is that for my students who I taught in North Huntsville, the stakes were much higher, because I had this big margin of error coming from a more privileged background, where I could afford to do drugs and get kicked out of high school. And at the end of the day, because I was going to great schools, I was still literate. And like, I was able to, once I got sober, like going to college wasn't such a big deal for me. Mm-hmm. But then there are young people all over America, obviously all over the world, where they do all the right things as young people. Like they actually like will eat up any resources given to them. And they just don't have enough yet, or they don't like, there's just not enough guidance maybe in that individual's life. And they don't even have the same outcomes as a person like me, who screwed up for a lot of my teenage years and was still able to land on my feet. And so like, when I had kids that I coached and taught who were doing things that I was doing at their age, it was a dilemma. And I don't know the right answer. Like, do you let kids be kids and make mistakes? Or like, do you recognize that their margin of error is a lot smaller, and their window of opportunity to be successful is a lot smaller because of socioeconomic factors? Mm-hmm. And, sure. I don't have the right answers there, but it's just something that I still constantly think about. And it made teaching in North Huntsville a real challenge, and it still is a real challenge, because there's amazing teachers who've been there long before I got there, and who will stay there long after I left.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the whole purpose of our show is to be, know, and do better. And I think that's a message for everyone, is we all have to do better in every aspect, and especially in helping others. And whether that's mentorship, guidance, counseling, coaching, volunteering in the community, like Jailen was talking about earlier, or being in the community and being a force in your community, giving back to your community. That's where the community is where it all happens for all of us. That's where we live. It's where the rubber meets the road, regardless of how we vote at the federal level. Who we have in our communities, helping, volunteering, representing, that's where it really matters. So Chris, the fact, you're in the community and Jailen's going to go back or wants to go back into that community and continue to build and help others is truly phenomenal. I just have one question for Luke. You ever run from the cops when you were young?
No, I never ran from the cops.
Never? Not once?
Yeah, well, I guess no, I did. Yeah, from like house parties where like I'd be at a party and the cops would come and then we just all scattered like a bunch of ants, like
Yeah.
running away. But it was one of those like I never had like Chris had where I had like a one-on-one running away from the cops. Usually it was like a group of people running away. So I'm like, well, they're not going to chase all of us, right? So I knew there was power in numbers.
Yeah,
in
I did
getting
once.
away. We're tell you really?
Oh yeah, I'm lucky I didn't die.
How
Truly.
old? How old?
About 14, probably about 14 or 15. I was on a dirt. My dad, my parents were divorced as well, but I was visiting my dad's, and he had dirt bikes. So I was on a dirt bike, and there's lots of dirt roads. But I decided one day I was going to go out onto the main road, the paved road, because I wanted to go a little faster. And it was only for about a stretch of a quarter mile between one dirt road and the next dirt road. And lo and behold, as soon as I got out onto the paved road, a cop car came down the road and passed me. And literally, as soon as I got to the next dirt road, because it was a very short span, but I was in the wrong. I wasn't supposed to have a dirt bike out on the paved road. And I turned the bike to go down the other dirt road, and I peeked over my right shoulder. And sure enough, man, the cop was turning around in the car to come after, and he put his lights on and came after me. So it's stupid, decided that I wasn't going to stop, that I was just going to gun it and try to get home. And I did. And I flew down that dirt road. Man, I was going as fast as I could go on a dirt bike. And he got right behind me, Luke. He got right up close to me. But then when I knew the roads, because I'd been riding them for a couple of years, I got to the end and there was like a 90-degree turn to the next road. And I knew it was there. So, I mean, I went into that turn and slammed the back tire brake, slid around the turn, and then gunned it again. And I think that turn is where I lost him, because within about 3 minutes, I was pulling into the garage, shut the door, and never saw the cop again.
Bo, that's some badass shit, Bo.
That's not smart. That's just saying, hey,
wow,
we do some. We all
Elle,
do
have you ever heard this story?
Stupid things.
I have not heard this story before, but I love that he made sure he asked you, and he didn't ask, like, did I have a story about running?
Wait,
have this
yeah, have you ever? Well,
house party kind of thing.
So wait, no, I thought of one. I thought of one that I forgot. So when I lived in Chicago, I moved to Chicago when I was 18. I never went to college. And Chicago's freezing. Chris, you said you were like up in Minnesota. So, like Chicago's like cold as can be. So I got a great deal on a studio apartment. We're talking like probably 2002, 2003. It was like $300 a month. And when it's cold in Chicago and you go look at these apartments, like nobody's outside. So you don't know what kind of neighborhood you're living in, right? Well, it warmed up and I picked, let's say, a not good neighborhood in Chicago to live. So one day, I was working at Red Lobster at this time in my life. I'm coming home from work and I do what any 19-year-old will do. Bought a little bag of weed on my way home, right? So I'm walking over towards my apartment building, and this is like a 10-story apartment building in Chicago, like iron gates outside and everything like that. Now, in this neighborhood in Chicago, they don't have like normal Chicago police. They have like narcotics cops, and that's it. They wear jeans and a bulletproof vest, and that's just like what you get in the neighborhood. So I was about a block away from my apartment, and one of them comes up, screeching up right behind me, Bo, and rolls down his window and goes, "Hey!" And I was like, fuck this. So I just took off and sprinted 1 block towards my place, ran through the iron gate because I had the key, shut the gate, and ran up 6 stories into my apartment building and shut the door, and then looked out the windows and the keyhole. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to make a sound. They're going to come out, start banging my door down. No one came after me, but that
wow,
reminded me of that. Yeah. So
hey,
that happened.
that happened.
You heard it here on the Bo and Luke show.
Well,
Sorry,
Luke,
Mom.
if
She
that ever
listened.
happens again, just remember, I learned this. You don't have to let them in unless they have a
See, that-
Yeah, we have Bo and Luke show representation.
If you
I
need
wasn't-
a shitty lawyer, call me.
I wasn't going to let them in. My plan was just like hide, like cower silently in the corner of my apartment and act like I wasn't there.
Yeah. So, Chris, did you have to take the bar exam to be a JAG attorney?
I did. So in
Good.
the military, you can take the bar in any state and be a judge advocate. So I took Vermont because it was the only state that let me take the bar exam while I was still in law school. So law school is 3 years, and in my last semester, I took the bar in Vermont, and it transfers to New York, where I'm from. And I hadn't yet gotten in. I'd been accepted into the Army, but my waiver hadn't yet gone through for being sober for 15 years. And so that took some time to go through. I didn't know if it would, and I'm super grateful that it did. But just a little bit about my plans. I planned on taking the bar early because I wanted to climb Mount Everest in March of this year, of 2020. Sorry, it's 2021 now. I want to climb Mount Everest. So I've been trying to climb the tallest mountain on each continent, and Everest was the last one.
What?
Not so much to say that I did that, but more just for myself. Like I started this thing 13 years ago of climbing the tallest mountain on each continent, and now I felt like I was almost done. And then COVID happened, and actually nobody climbed Everest this past year. I mean, if anybody did, it was like the Sherpa who lived there who were putting up lines, but I don't think anybody summited Everest this past year. I could be wrong. But they closed the mountain down to tourists, and then I joined the Army, and so now I'll probably climb it in 20 years when I retire from the Army.
Wait, but I have a caveat as a plug for one of our upcoming guests. It's Harold Earls and his wife.
Oh, wow.
He climbed Mount Everest as an active duty officer to raise awareness for PTSD.
No way.
So yes, I would say that there are resources out there to do it on active duty, and the precedent has been set if it's something that you're interested in training for.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to tune in next week. I want to hear that. That's very cool.
You should be a great guest to get in touch with.
So yeah, I am a BARD attorney. Right now I'm a legal assistance attorney at Fort Bragg for the 18th Airborne Corps. So I'm doing a lot of family law for soldiers, but this is like literally my third week, and I'm still waiting on computer access. So I haven't yet started lawyering. I'll do like wills and divorces and child custody. And if a soldier buys a Maserati on his credit card and can't afford it, I'll help him kind of get out of that, hopefully. But
that's awesome.
I do have a question for Jailen. I think about this a lot, and people ask me a lot, Jailen, and they ask me a lot of times specifically about you. But what do you think it is that makes you successful? Like, why do you think you were a state champion? But more importantly to me, like, why do you think you're about to become a college graduate and an accountant, and probably a successful one, and possibly even a successful high school wrestling coach?
So I think for much of it has just been my own will to go about things. More recently, I could say I've been a lot more autonomous as I've been in school, but for me to place my trust in people like you to give me outlets, like taking me on a tour to Berea College and all across the world, all across the South and whatever, through Cap and Gown, and for me to place my trust in Khadijah Abdullah, who's been a great mentor, and so many. For myself, I put my trust in many, and I take what I can from them, and I autonomously move about that on my own. So, it's just placing my trust, seeing what's best for me, doing what I have to do to put myself in that position to see what's best for me. And then I just execute. Just thinking about high school, I put my trust in you to allow me on the team and let me in your classroom. And, for me to get in there and execute, I was able to put myself in a position to be in school for free. Just putting my trust one place, taking what I can, then moving with it. So,
and you remind me of something that I've also wanted to ask you about. I never have, but there's a layer of adversity that was certainly present in your high school experience, and even afterwards, that in addition to just growing up as an underprivileged African American male in the Southeast, there was a layer of adversity, and that was that other young people at your high school, your classmates, would make fun of you for being like a teacher's pet or a coach's pet, or Like, I remember hearing it sometimes. Like, I'd hear kids make fun of you for basically going on field trips with me and other teachers, or like listening to me in practice, or basically like when you were at a crossroads, you would choose the road sometimes, not all the time because you're a kid and you're human, but sometimes you would choose the road that your educators or me specifically suggested you take. Go on this field trip, come to practice, go to this tournament. You showed up a lot to things. Like, you showed up all the time. You participated a lot in wholesome things that we suggested you do, and you got made fun of a lot for it. Can you talk about that and like how you overcame that? If it was like, I never experienced that as a kid. I never did the right thing really, and I certainly didn't get made fun of if I did. So I just want to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, and I can recall. It's funny. I was talking to one of my friends about that recently, but I feel like for me, I always put myself in those positions and do what was advised by my teachers, because I feel like if I didn't know it then, I was gonna learn it later, and that there was always like a growth mindset that came out of that. So like there would all like I feel like you've always told me the hardest things to do in life are things that you don't want to do, and that's always stuck with me. It's always stuck with me since you said it, and through everything that I didn't want to do. I know I didn't want to do it, but there's something about me pushing through this now that's gonna help me out in the future. So like I believe in that's much of where my battle rhythm comes from. Is like not giving up. Because there's always, in anything we do that we don't want to do, there's something that we take out of it. Me wrestling, I can promise you, I did not want to go to practice for 2 hours, 3 hours, however long we were there. But for me to learn that if I go to this practice and I practice for 2 hours, what I put into this is what I'm going to get out. There was just
I don't want to go either some days. I'll be real. Some days I want to skip too.
Yeah, so for me, it was just always, like I said, if I didn't know it then, I was going to realize it later that there's just a growth mindset in everything that we don't want to do. Like, you're going to learn that if you push through this now, it's just going to make it easier to push through something else later. So that was just the biggest thing that helped me push through that.
Man. Luke, that's like the most powerful stuff, really. And I'd say this wholeheartedly that we've had on the show. I wish I would have learned that when I was 18, 17, 16 years old. I tell you, Jailen, when my wife and I were watching Wrestle, and this is before knowing you'd be on the show, or even that Chris would be coming on the show and that we'd be having this conversation. But I believe, if I remember correctly, in the beginning of the documentary, you were in some scenes in the beginning in the kitchen or someone with your grandfather. I think it was your grandfather in the beginning. And I remember wholeheartedly saying to my wife, I said, man, there's just something about Jailen. I verbally said that out loud at the beginning of the show, that there's something about him. And me, in my military background, 26 years in the Army, having led troops from all over the place, and I could tell that you listened, like that you were listening. Like when your grandfather was talking to you, like when you watched, I'm focusing on your mannerisms and how you were responding. Like, man, he's not saying a lot of words, but he is totally into this conversation, because he could just see in your body language that you were 100% listening intently. It was something. And then you were a freshman. You were what, 14 years old maybe at that time?
15, 16.
Yeah. Yeah. It was good on you, man. I mean, yeah, powerful.
Jailen, you want to tell Bo and Luke and Elle the irony of them calling you a good listener?
Yeah, that's crazy. When I was in the first grade, I was told that I have a hearing impairment in my left ear. So from elementary school up through high school, selectively I would wear my hearing aids in high school, but yeah, I was issued hearing aids when I was in elementary school. So I'm listening as hard as I can, at least.
Yeah.
So Jailen was behind a little bit in reading, in part because he wouldn't wear his hearing aids all the time. Mm-hmm. And so like he would go through entire days of school where he could only hear, 30% of what the teacher was saying. And it was interesting. Like, I think that in a weird way, like that has actually helped him, that adversity of having partial deafness has helped him overcompensate, where I agree. He is an excellent listener. And that's obviously serving him well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Luke, any parting thoughts? I mean, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show, for sure.
Yeah, guys, thanks for being real. Thanks for being vulnerable on here and just human. Like, you guys are awesome. Thanks so much. I hope the listeners get as much out of this session as I have. And listeners, you got to go watch Wrestle on Amazon Prime. Look, we're still pretty much in a lockdown. I guarantee you it's better than 90% of the crap that you're consuming on Netflix or Amazon right now. So there's no excuse. Get on there, see Chris and Jailen. It's a great story. It's good.
Yeah, one thing I want to say about there's two things I want to say. So Wrestle is kind of an underdog story. It was a low budget documentary filmed by, it was a first time feature length documentary by Susanna Herbert, who directed it and produced it. And it was her and a director of photography, Sinisha Kuchik. And it was just them two, and they had a camera, and then they had another producer, Lauren Belfer, back in Brooklyn. But it was a small operation, really low budget, and they've done well with it. You know, I know they worked really hard to share Jailen and his teammates' story, and I think because of that documentary, they've been able to get a lot of energy in the community in Huntsville and throughout Alabama, and now they have great coaches who've taken over and hopefully will bring the team to new heights.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I want to say is just thank you to Elle for finding the documentary and reaching out to me, and Bo and Luke. I can't tell you what it means to me to be able to interview my former student, and kind of have this as a page of my life scrapbook now, where I can ask Jailen these questions that I haven't gotten to ask him. It means a lot, in part because I don't think I would be an Army officer if it weren't for Jailen and his teammates. I mean, I have to remember, we all have to, I coached about 150 other students, and all of them were as special to me as Jailen, but few of them have been as successful as Jailen. And so it definitely, he's a big inspiration to me as an adult man. Like, you know, I draw from his strength, and borrow it when I need it. So thanks for letting me talk to him. And it's been great getting to meet all three of you.
Thank you so much. Elle, any parting thoughts?
I would just like to add a little bit about my discovery of Wrestle. And so I'm going to caveat off of Luke. I do encourage everybody to check out the documentary. My friends and I discovered it by accident. Flipping TV, we had about 30 minutes to kill before our dinner reservation. And the documentary had already started, so we missed the beginning. And personally for us, our favorite development throughout was watching Scribner. And it might sound a little weird, but I think you see him a lot in the beginning. And at first we started out and we're like, who is this punk? He's coming in here like trying to relate to these students. But by the time we had to go to dinner, we were like rooting for you. We were like, yeah, like, come on, like this is going to be great. These kids need to listen to him. So we enjoyed it so much that when we came home from dinner, having not seen the beginning and not seen the end, we were like, how do we find this documentary and how do we watch the whole thing? And we rewatched it from start to finish. And then the next day I was like, I have to find this guy because he needs to be on the podcast. And I think it's so cool that we were able to also host you, Jailen. So thank you so much for joining us. It's a documentary. It's the chronological order is a little skewed, but I think it is incredible that you guys have been able to share that experience and that story with people like me I was sitting in Dallas, Texas, like who would have thought, and now you're here sharing your story. So I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So
thanks for opening up the time to allow us to talk about the documentary and just what's going on currently in our lives. So yeah, thanks for the time and all that.
Yeah. So Jailen, we'll let you take us out of the show. So you can give the Bo and Luke Nation, all of our listeners, some parting comments, if you will, whatever you want to say. And then when you're finished, just finish it up with that's a wrap, and we'll call it a night.
Jailen in past
no
life,
pressure.
He wanted to be a
just pretend you're on your own show. You want to be a sportscaster. Yeah, whatever.
Jailen actually hosts
talk about football.
He hosts the Berea College sports show. So
what?
So I know that if Jailen doesn't bring the energy right now, he's mailing it in. So he's gonna bring it. We'll see.
This is on the spot. This is a little rough. I want to do something sports related. Okay, bold prediction for anybody listening. Don't put your money on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But anyways, we're going to wrap it up with that.
Awesome.
What's the line?
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. That's awesome. A wrap.
Yeah, good stuff, gentlemen.
Tune in for a new episode every Thursday. You can subscribe to our email newsletter for information on upcoming guests, giveaways, and more. Rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to our sponsor, Sound United, for quality broadcast audio throughout Season 2.